So it's a pleasure to have you with us here tonight. Have you been getting some migrants starting to reach Ithaca?
Yep, things are starting
Picking up a little?
picking
Are
up
the
a-
days
picking
are
up a
the
little.
days getting longer in Ithaca as well?
They are, although it still can be so gray like today. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Right. It was
This
a
time of
little brisk here today and yesterday.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but there were red-winged blackbirds and things out over the weekend, so
Yeah.
they're around.
Yeah. We've had flocks of grackles and
Mhm.
meadowlarks,
Yep.
some turkey
Yeah, I haven't
vultures.
gone out to get in some good birding, but I've been following other people who have and posted
Right.
things. So I know there's some good things out there if I were just to get out.
So do you look at birds that aren't birds of paradise?
I do, but I'm not the birder that I, used to be before I started doing Birds of Paradise. I was an undergraduate, interested in birds kind of in high school, and I was an undergraduate at University of Arizona, and so I did a lot of birding then.
Great
And
place.
then, graduate school takes away all your time, and a lot of people I know in ornithology basically stopped being as serious of birders in
Right.
graduate school, and then pick it back up hopefully another time. So yeah,
Right.
that's unfortunately was the case for me. I
Fit
don't
it
get out
in
and bird as much as I'd
here and
like to.
there as best
Yeah.
you can.
Yep,
Yeah. Is University of Arizona in Tucson?
that's right. Yep, that was a great place to be an undergraduate.
Yeah. A lot of good birding down in that area, down
Definitely.
close.
And I spent a lot of time traveling to northern Mexico around the Gulf of California and those things with friends. We would do birding trips or biology trips. Even some of our courses had field trips there, and that was great.
So to people who are joining us, we'll be starting in just a couple minutes. We're just engaged in small talk as we're waiting for a couple of minutes to pass. And I see people are entering into the chat where they're
Coming from.
zooming in from, including one from the state of Washington. That's a little bit far afield. Not a local, Gig Harbor, Washington.
Wow. There you go.
And Noah, Anna, and Ella from Delaware. Say hello to Joe for us. So 7:03, I think we can get started. Let's just see who else we have here. Someone in Keene, New Hampshire with a short-eared owl.
Nice.
We're located. Have you been to, you familiar with York County at all? In
I'm
the
not.
southernmost county of Maine.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably been through
Yeah.
passing through Maine, but I can't say I'm familiar with it in any way.
Yeah, we're between Portsmouth and Portland.
Yeah, so pass through somewhere along the way.
Yeah, we have good birding here if you ever have a chance to stop by.
Yeah.
We've had some starbirds here, such as the great black hawk a year ago. And just a month or so ago, we had a redwing that stuck around for a couple of weeks, which was pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's great.
was hiding with some robins at first and then revealed itself.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So that was a first for most birders in Maine. So let's move on. Hang on a second. So my name is Bill Graven, and on behalf of York County Audubon and Maine Audubon and our board of directors, delighted to welcome you all here tonight. It's our pleasure to have you. First, I'd like to mention that I'd like to celebrate for 10 seconds at least the fact that the days are getting longer and birds are starting to return north who fled wisely to the south earlier several months ago. They're coming back. We've had flocks of red-winged blackbirds and grackles and meadowlarks So I hope you're getting out and a chance to see some of those on days that are, it's going to be nicer tomorrow than it's been the last couple of days. So thanks for joining us. And a special shout out to all of you who are members of York County Audubon / Maine Audubon, because it's your membership support that enables us to do these programs and everything else we do. So thank you very much. I'm going to start by mentioning our program for next month. Next month, we'll be joined by, on Tuesday, April 20th, by Doug Hitchcox, the staff naturalist for Maine Audubon. And Doug, if you know him, as I know many of you do, is an incredible resource for birds and birding and birders in the state of Maine and nature in general. He contributes in so many ways. And one project that he's been particularly working on is the Maine Bird Atlas, which is a 5-year project, which we're now entering the 4th year of. And it's an effort by volunteers all over the state to document the winter bird residency and summer breeding timing and behavior of birds in every corner of the state. This was previously done 50 years ago, approximately. And so we were overdue for an update. And this will provide us with tremendous information about how birds are doing throughout the state, as certain things have certainly changed quite a bit in 50 years. So I think it's going to be a fascinating program. You'll also be able to find out how you can help participate in it if you'd like to, but it will be of interest whether you're participating firsthand or not. So we encourage you to join us for that next month. But tonight we have a very different focus. We're joined by Edwin Scholes, was the project founder of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Birds of Paradise project. And we are thrilled to have him here tonight. Birds of Paradise are, of course, these incredible species, approximately 40 different species that exist mostly in New Guinea and that vicinity, that area of the world. And he's been working on this for 20 years. And with his colleagues, he's done incredible work documenting both via photography and video, incredible documentation of all of these species, much footage that had never been captured before, really phenomenal stuff. And we are so thrilled to have him here tonight with us to tell us about it, tell us how we can possibly help efforts to protect the habitat there for these birds. So we're looking forward to hearing about that very much. And I will add that we will have a Q&A at the end, as we normally do. So if you have any questions, just hit the Q&A button at the lower center of your screen and type them in at any time during the program. And we'll do our best to get some answers at the end. So Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Please take it away.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Of course, I can't see all of you out there.
Share your screen.
Yes, I will. I'll get that screen sharing going here.
Yeah.
But I see there's about 89 people here, so that's great. Thanks for showing up tonight. All right, let's see how this screen sharing is gonna go here. Let's confirm that we're all good. How are we doing? Is it all up? Bill, is it looking good to you?
Yeah, yes, you're good.
Okay, good. All right, then I'm ready to roll.
You're good and we're good.
Yep, all right. Let me make sure things are gonna advance. All right, so I'm just gonna jump on in then. So I have given a lot of talks on Birds of Paradise and the Birds of Paradise project over the years, and all different types of talks to all different types of audiences, big and small. And two questions repeatedly come up in most of the talks I've given over the years. And I'm going to try to, in some one form or another, address both of those questions tonight, right off the bat. those, and that'll be the talk for tonight. And those questions that we often get at the end are there any new species of birds of paradise to be discovered? That's a question that Tim Lehman and I, my colleague in this, have gotten for years. And then the other one, which is a great question that we often haven't talked about too much in our presentations, has been what are the threats to birds of paradise and what's their conservation status? So without further ado for tonight, we're going to jump into that. But before I get into the stories, I want to just take a minute to acknowledge my collaborator and partner on Birds of Paradise work since 2004, Tim Lehman, and just take a moment to acknowledge that all these fantastic photos and nearly all the videos that we're going to enjoy tonight come from this great collaboration that I've had with Tim over the years. You know, even his self-portraits of himself working in a tree blind, photographing kingbirds of paradise are pretty extraordinary. So when I'm talking about we, a lot of the times, if it's in the field, it's me and Tim that I'm talking about. Sometimes it might be the bigger we with my collaborators and colleagues at Lab of Ornithology and other places, but field work, it's mainly Tim. All right, so to kick things off, you might have seen a glimpse of this bird here at the title slide. And so I'm going to tell you a story about this unusual looking bird. Some of you may already recognize it, but perched like this, you know, if you were able to be birding in New Guinea and able to get a good look at this particular bird of paradise, you'd be pretty excited, and you might, you know, think that it looks a lot like one of the most famous of all the birds of paradise, one that you might have seen elsewhere, like this one here, the famous superb bird of paradise, which in this older video of ours here, you can see that it transforms from bird-like into what we kind of jokingly refer to as the psychedelic smiley face. And in a blink of an eye, you know, it goes from bird-like to very unbird-like form here. This video has been seen around many places before, so you probably, some of you have seen ours or others. Now, this superb bird of paradise is found in mountain forests all throughout, you know, the main place where birds of paradise are found, and that's in the island of New Guinea. So if you're looking at this map here, all those places that you see in the darker shades of green, those are the mountainous regions of New Guinea. And nearly all of those places would have superb birds of paradise, you know, somewhere in the right elevational range, which is in roughly the 1,000 to 2,000 meter elevation range. So you just imagine like a ring going around New Guinea would have superb bird of paradise. But a few years back, over here in the far western part of the island of New Guinea, in this area that's known as the Bird's Head Peninsula, you can see it there, or Vogelkop Peninsula, as it's also called, which is German for bird's head. Maybe you've noticed that New Guinea looks like a giant bird. Some people say it looks like a giant cassowary. Some people might say it looks like a giant bird of paradise, but this is the neck and the head region here. And it was in the forests of this part of New Guinea. You can see where it says Arfak Mountains there. That's exactly where we were. That we started to notice that something was a little different with the superb bird of paradise there. And the first thing we noticed was that the voice, the song call of the males was very different than what we had recognized and heard many times all throughout its distribution in New Guinea. So the sound that we were familiar with, even though it has a little bit of geographic variation throughout the rest of New Guinea, is this harsh call note. Interesting, not necessarily beautiful, but that was very, you know, indicative sound that you're in the territory, the right forest habitat of superb bird of paradise. Hear that sound, you know, superbs are nearby. And they're not an uncommon bird of paradise species within their right elevational zone. Even around human habitation things, you can hear that sound. But in the western part of New Guinea, this Bird's Head region, the males had a sound like that, this more pure tone whistle-like call. And in fact, when we first heard that, I think the first time I heard it was in about 2009. I might have heard it before that, but I didn't recognize it as a superb bird of paradise. That's how different it was. But in 2009 is when we realized, wow, okay, that's what this population of superb sounds like. And it wasn't on the forefront of our mind at the time, and it wasn't until we got look at the females that we realized that the females look different too. If you see the one on the left here, that's the all black head. That's this western form, compared to the more typical brown and white patterned head of the females all throughout the rest of the range. Now, of course, this was known already in documented geographic variation from specimens. And so it's something that Tim and I could have known at the time. I didn't recognize it until years later, even from specimens, but it wasn't unknown at the time. We just didn't see any females in the Western population in most of the places where we were bumping into the superb. But the displays of this Western form had never been documented before. And so we decided that now that we had found a particular forest in the Arfax where they seemed to be pretty abundant at the right elevation, that we were going to make a specific expedition and try to film the courtship displays of this Western form that had the different vocalizations and the different females. So we went into the forest, and you'll see that log laying on the forest floor there. Here's another image of it. And this is what we were looking for. This is kind of the classic, quintessential, if you will, display site of a male superb bird of paradise. They will display occasionally up in the canopy on a branch. Sometimes they'll even have like a big fat branch, like a big limb that they will display on to females or semi-regularly. But really, if you're in good habitat that's not too disturbed, the males are looking for a fallen log on the forest floor. Even an old one like this that's been there for a long time has probably been used. And so on this particular expedition, or where we went to go film them, just prior, before we decided to start really working on them, we kind of had a fortuitous opportunity to recognize that this log was being used when we were filming a parodia just uphill of this log, and went out one morning and confirmed that the male was visiting this log, and decided to set up kind of our usual ground displaying bird of paradise setup, where we built a blind out of materials in the forest, mainly tarp on the top to keep us dry, some kind of plastic, but mostly we're using palm fronds or ferns and kind of local bush materials. And if you look closely there, you can see there's several windows with camera lenses coming out. And in this particular instance, we even had a camera on the outside of the blind there. You can see there's an additional camera that's being controlled remotely. That's me there setting that one up. And we had several different cameras set up so that we could get multiple perspectives from multiple cameras all at the same time. So with rare displays, and in our case, we felt like our experience had told us that every time we tried to work on superb bird of paradise, it never worked out the way we had hoped. And not an uncommon bird, but getting good displays was really challenging over the years. And so if we were get lucky this time, we wanted to make sure we had as many different cameras running at the same time to get as much information about the behavior as possible from multiple viewpoints. And so inside this blind, we sat there for days, actually weeks, from well before dawn. We would trek about almost an hour, 45 minutes to an hour in the dark, and sit there and wait for the sun to come up so we wouldn't disturb the birds. and in hope, and that we would get lucky with a superb bird of paradise showing up. So that's Tim. You can see there manning the big video camera, and that's me on the iPad checking Facebook and Instagram. Now I'm just kidding. Of course, there's no Wi-Fi or cell service in the rainforest here. I'm actually using the iPad there as part of the system for remotely controlling the cameras that are outside of the blind there. So when the male finally came down and gave his first practice display on this log, what we saw really surprised us. Some of you might have seen this before, but you can imagine what it was like when we saw it for the first time. What we notice is that when the male lifts up these specialized feathers from the back of the neck and spreads them around his upper body and creates that smiley face, psychedelic smiley face, look that we knew from the suburb, that this was different. That when we just quickly looked at it, we thought something's different, but it took us a while at the very beginning to articulate what was different. But what we noticed, shortly thereafter, was that the shape was a bit more rounded on the top, and that the bottom of it had it was kind of crescent shaped with these pointy tips coming down on either side of the smiley face. And if you look at it side by side with the kind of display form of the more widespread superb, you can see just how different they are. So it's rounder, more crescent shaped than the oval shape of the widespread superb, and the tips are more pointy on the underside. That's what makes the crescent. But also, if you look at the bright iridescent feathers that form the mouth, if you will, of the smiley face, in the Western form, the crest is a little bit smaller and it kind of is angled down a little bit, so it's sort of like the grumpy or frowny face cousin of the smiley face superb bird of paradise. And of course, in this shot, you can also see the difference in the two females watching the display. So just a quick point, if you're not familiar with the superb bird of paradise at all, the eyes are actually not eye spots. That's actually the iridescent blue feathers on the crown of the bird. And what makes the eye spots is almost an optical illusion of sorts, where the male lifts his bill straight up, and that divides the crown into two halves. And then there's special feathers that come off the sides of the bill that actually kind of complete the rounded eye spot appearance. And there's actually even a slight difference in the shape between those two there, but it's a little bit more subtle and nuanced. But what surprised us most was when we saw the male perform his dance for a female. So this Western form circles around the female, kind of this quick glide sidestep, and he's moving around and he's making this snapping sound that is common to the other superb as well, which is done kind of behind the scenes there with his wings. And that movement is very different from this kind of vigorous up and down bouncing side to side, back and forth. That's the hallmark of the more widespread superbs. So when we look at this full package of information, what the display looks like to the female, where the male is gliding around in a very particular step, the shape of his overall display form, the voice, the knowledge that the female plumage is different, and that this population in the Vogelkop region is geographically completely isolated from the more widespread forms throughout the central part of New Guinea. We kind of came to the conclusion that our behavioral data was pointing to the fact that answers the question that I posed here at the beginning, that yes, this looks to be a separate species, and an unrecognized species of bird of paradise that had been hiding under our noses all along. And it just turns out that around the same time we were making these field discoveries, another team of researchers looking at DNA evidence from museum specimens and doing a revision of the phylogenetics and systematics of all the superb bird of paradise subspecies and the sister group, the close relatives, the genus the genus Tylorus, the riflebirds. They also concluded that this bird's head Vogelkopf form was genetically distinct enough that it should be treated as a separate species. So we're happy to have played our role in helping to introduce this newest member of the bird of paradise family tree. And more importantly, we are really excited that this was now the fourth bird of paradise species endemic to this bird's head region. So there's an endemic Parodia from this region, an endemic Astrapia, and an endemic Paradagala. So clearly this western part of New Guinea also has lots of other endemic species, including other endemic birds. So this is a special place, and worthy of all the kinds of protection that places with endemic species deserve. And I tell this story because it really points out just how much there is to discover. You think of something like birds of paradise, really charismatic group that's highly regarded and has been in lots of nature documentaries and things, that there wouldn't be new species hiding out there. And the fact is there are. We made this discovery, and first hints of the field behavior was in 2016. We did our work in 2017 and 2018. So this is still relatively new stuff. But I want to step back a minute, and I want to talk about how we got to this point. How we got here. Did we land with a bunch of gear in a helicopter, or how did we get to this point in our story? And so in order to do that, I want to kind of step back a little bit even broader and just make sure that everybody's clear on Bird of Paradise 101. I think Bill mentioned it in the introduction. But the birds of paradise is the family Paradiseidae, and it's one group of birds that are more closely related to each other than they are to any other family of birds. There's about 40 species. When Tim and I made this slide for our book a while back in an article in National Geographic magazine, we had just completed an effort to try to document all the species of birds of paradise in the wild with photographs and video for the first time. And at that time, we recognized 39 species. Now we would have to recognize 40 or more. And I say more because the taxonomic fallout of the new species isn't just that there's one more superb, that there's actually now 3 superbs. Or 3, Lopharina in the genus Lopharina. So important things to know about birds of paradise: they are largely found only in the New Guinea area, a handful of surrounding islands, a few species in the northeastern part of Australia. Some of you might have seen those before if you've been birding in Australia. They're all forest dwelling. They're non-migratory, so they're very sedentary, deep forest birds, dependent on forest. They are mostly fruit eating, although they're omnivorous at times and will eat insects when they encounter them, but mostly dependent on fruit. And it's their mating system that has led to this sort of polygynous mating system that has allowed sexual selection to create the extreme differences in the way the females look and the males look, and the extreme diversity that you see in the color and the shape and the behavior of the males, which is what you're looking at here. These are all male birds of paradise. And we finished up this work to document them all in the wild for the first time in about 2012. And that's when we had an article in National Geographic and a book and a museum exhibit, some other things you might have seen, website at the Lab of Ornithology. And so what I want to talk about now is some of the work that Tim and I have done in the years since we finished that big multi-year effort to document them all. Most of that was just trying to get some usable, photographs and video of behavior and some kind of basic scientific documentation. And then in the years since, we've kind of decided to dig in deeper and do more in-depth, both scientific research and documentation work on just a handful of species. And this largely came out of some work that we were doing at the end of our multi-year effort, where we started really focusing on documenting display behaviors, the thing that draws us to birds of paradise, from new perspectives that had never really been seen before because it was difficult just to see the displays at all, but also from perspectives that really illustrated what it is that the females are looking at, because all this male plumage is a product of selection by females for who they're going to mate with, which males are the most attractive, right? So all of these ornaments are geared towards looking good for the female. So if you don't understand the behavior from the way that the female sees them, then you're kind of missing the whole point of what they're doing. And we started doing this. This is a kind of an image of Tim's field notebook. We started working on this in about 2011, and this came from our book, and we wrote about it a few times, talked about it in other talks that we have done. But this is when we first started pioneering this multi-camera setup, where we kind of had our traditional blind on the ground, where we would sit and do our observations, say, of this Parodia dancing on the ground, and we would have a big camera in there, and that's where we would do observations from, and that was the traditional view. But we knew that the females perched above, and they were looking down at the male, and so we went on this kind of really prolonged effort to try to document these displays from the female's perspective. And so this is when we first started using remote cameras. In this case, they were tethered to a laptop in the blind with a cable. Now we do it wirelessly. And once we had one out, we thought, why not? Let's try to get multiple cameras out so we can get as much behavior from different perspectives with every single rendition of the display, and not have to wait for weeks just to get multiple displays in some cases. Sometimes females only show up once. So in recent years, we've refined these methods, and they're basically similar in setup. It's just that the camera technology has changed, and now it's wireless and much more advanced in many ways. And so here is a similar look at the female perspective. You can see the female there. This is from a camera that's above, kind of looking over the shoulder of the female. In this case, it's of a Western Parodia, which we had never worked on before with this female perspective work. And we have multiple cameras all around. This is the one that's approximating the female view. And the thing that we were really trying to see here with this kind of higher resolution imagery is, what happens at this moment. Boom, there it is in stills, where the male pulls his head down, flashes his breast shield up, and wiggles his head back and forth. And that's the only time you can see that iridescent green-blue band on the back of his head. So this only happens in an instant when you're watching this display. And if you're looking at it from the ground, you wouldn't see any of that color at all. You're looking at them from the front, and this was completely lost on us until we started doing this work, studying these behaviors from the female perspective. And camera technology has improved so much that now we have, incredible resolution. You can see so much more detail here in these feathers of the breast shield, how they all reflect yellow from this perspective. When you see them, perching, or in normal context, they look green, maybe blue. They only look yellow in this context. And so lots of scientific discoveries, as well as just really, great documentation has come out of this work. I didn't show you the video here, but if you want to see more of this, you can actually see this same individual bird on the same court and the same females watching this behavior in the Jungles episode of the documentary Our Planet on Netflix. So kind of this cutting edge camera technology Tim and I were able to, put to use for filming with the team that was working on that documentary in 2006. So I encourage you to go and check that out if you can get on Netflix and watch that if you haven't already. And if you have seen it, watch it again with a new appreciation. So we knew, Tim and I knew after all these years of working on birds of paradise, that the discoveries on the female perspective weren't limited to these parodias. We, you know, pioneered this effort on Wands's parodia in Papua New Guinea back in 2011. We did it again for this Netflix film and some research, and later with the Western parodia. And it's, really important for these ground displaying species where the male's on the ground and the females are above looking down. And so we had some insight that, hey, maybe this female's perspective looking down was important for a couple of the other ground displaying species. So we, decided we wanted to see what we could discover with those. And our next candidate took us here to this beautiful scenery that you're looking at. This is the home of Wilson's bird of paradise. We're looking at Waigeo Island in the Raja Ampat region of Western New Guinea, so just off that Bird's Head region. There's a handful of islands there famous for diving, and a couple of these islands also have this species. This is the male Wilson's bird of paradise. Truly, iconic bird of paradise with this bright blue head, that's skin on its head. It's not really feathered other than that little thin black feather track there. The yellow on the kind of nape and upper back, and the red, the blue legs, this curlicue, tail. But importantly, this species displays on the ground very much like parodias, but different in that the male doesn't actually dance on the ground. Like, he doesn't use the cleared stage for his dance moves. He clears the ground, for presentation, but he does his displays from a little sapling like these. You can see him perched there. And so what we wanted to do is see when the female comes and lands on that sapling and looks down at this male, what this behavior would look like. So here's a video. There's a male next to his little sapling there, and a female is going to come here in a minute. So he goes onto his little sapling. That's the female above him there. He's looking at her. And so this is a camera that's kind of approximating that female view. And you can see he's kind of winking his eyebrows there and flashing his mouth at her. And then in a moment, he's going to transform himself, boom, into this incredibly different view than anything we had ever seen before. So we were familiar with this behavior where the male pulled out his breast shield and kind of looked like a flat surface looking up at the female with his body all compacted and his tail cocked behind him. But from all of our traditional views from the side, where we're sitting in a blind and photographing or observing, all that iridescent color essentially goes black. And so we didn't see any color. We knew his breast was green. So I always imagined there'd be some green color reflecting towards the female there, but kind of blew our minds just to see how distinctive it really is when you see it from this female perspective. And then also the little subtleties that were kind of lost on us, like how the blue of the tail lines up with the blue on the head and kind of creates this, incredible work of art that is the body of the male Wilsons. So all this is pointing out to just how directional, these displays are. If the male's not lined up right with the eye of the female, she's not going to see the exact right things. So he has to get the geometry of where the female is, where the light is coming through the canopy, where his body is, all worked out, to be an attractive mate, presumably. So not this particular individual, but a nearby individual, Wilson's, was one that Tim and I worked on, similar, like what I mentioned before with the parodia, for the BBC series Planet Earth 2, so the second Planet Earth 2. So there's a Sequence in the Jungles episode there on Wilson's Bird of Paradise, which also has some of this female perspective work. So if you're interested in seeing more of that and seeing their take on this story, I encourage you to find that. I think it might also be on Netflix now. I can't remember, but it's out there somewhere to see. So, knowing how amazing that was, we then knew exactly what our next target was going to be. That required a trip back out of the islands and back into the mountains. And in this case, we went back to the Bird's Head region, into the forest not far from where we started tonight, where the superb bird of paradise lives, and in the Arfak Mountains. And what we were looking for there was another species that lives in this kind of edge between the hill forest and the cloud forests. And it's also another ground displaying bird. It's this species here, which is the sister species to Wilson's, but it's a much more widespread bird of paradise. This is the male magnificent bird of paradise, and it is found in these kind of hill forests all throughout mainland New Guinea, essentially that whole area that I showed you at the beginning where some form of superbs are found. You go down the mountain a few hundred meters, and you're most likely going to also run into these guys. I would say they're, among the more common birds of paradise if you're in the right places. So much so that over the years, Tim and I had kind of taken them for granted. We had photographed them and watched them. We thought we knew everything there was to know about them. Of course, we were wrong. But after seeing the Wilsons, we thought, well, we got to try this female perspective thing on the magnificent bird of paradise. So this was the traditional view. If you're sitting in a blind and you've got a really great lens on a camera like Tim does, and you see the female coming down and the male's kind of in that peak moment of his display, like we saw with Wilson's, he does a similar thing where his breast is flattened out, not quite the same shape as the Wilson's. He kind of leans back more and stretches his breast out, and he lifts up this cape behind his head, which the Wilson's didn't do. And of course, we figured that's going to look pretty amazing from the top. It's hard to even see it exactly from the side. So we deployed all of our system again, and this is what we saw with the magnificent bird of paradise. There's the male. He's kind of pulsing his breast shield and looking around at females and calling. And here is this female perspective approximation. The female lands there, the male's in that display form. And he's got this incredible green on the breast shield that's showing up in a way that we've never seen it before, and an enormous amount of details that were completely lost on us, having not seen this before. One is just how incredibly intense that yellow halo around his head is, pretty spectacular. It was hard to even imagine exactly what that looked like until we saw this. These blue feathers that kind of form this bib down the center of the green, that's not really visible at all when the bird is kind of normally perching or moving around. It just doesn't look like anything. Those feathers don't form a pattern like they do here, and that incredible blue edging around the breast. So all of these things were just completely lost on us until we did this work to document these species from this new perspectives and from the female perspective. So even in a very common and widespread bird of paradise, like the magnificent bird of paradise, there's plenty of surprises in store. If we just, get out there into the forests of New Guinea and put in the hard work to, really see what they're doing. And, I just want to say that, like those other species that I share with you tonight, there now is an opportunity to actually see the fruits of our work on this bird. I think this very same individual again for another new film that was just released, I think about a month ago, called Attenborough's Life in Color. It's been out on the BBC already, and I know exactly when, but I believe it comes to Netflix also in April. So I haven't seen it myself. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that on the big screen. I've only seen the cut from the footage that we captured and sent to the editor. So looking forward to that. And I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in seeing these. Tim and I are fortunate to have had an opportunity to work with some of these best documentary filmmakers to do both our exploration work and our science and our documentary work. So this brings me to kind of where I want to wind us up for tonight, and that is, in the last couple of years, we really, kind of turned the corner, feeling like we pushed the envelope for these species with studying them, documenting them. Of course, there's other species that we want to do that for, and we have plans to, and there's other forests to go to and explore and other species to see. But we feel like there's so much of that kind of work to be done in New Guinea, that these research and photography expeditions could go on forever, and we're not getting any younger, and we are increasingly becoming alarmed, probably like many of you, about the future of all of the natural world, right? Birds And forests all over the planet are threatened now, from big forces like climate change to smaller proximate forces like deforestation and other forms of habitat loss. Um, but New Guinea, these forests that birds of paradise call home, are still incredibly intact, and there's still a lot of forests, especially compared to other places in the world, especially other tropical forests, where you're looking out the window of an airplane flying over it, and you're not seeing a huge patchwork of deforested land and agriculture and roads and towns, and then just some areas of forest and national parks and things. In a lot of New Guinea, you're looking out at land that's not protected in any way, and it's all just forest with a very minimal human impact, other than some indigenous peoples who've lived there for tens of thousands of years and have been stewards of the forest. They're not able to threaten the forest with their livelihoods in the same way that outsiders are when we come in and try to commodify the forest. So for us, this has always been really heartwarming, and part of the reason we love working in New Guinea and on Birds of Paradise. But we also realize, we got to do more with our opportunity to get people's attention and the interest in Birds of Paradise to help protect these forest homes in places like New Guinea of the Birds of Paradise. So I want to switch gears a little bit here in the visual presentation, just again to give you some information about that. So New Guinea, which, like I said, is home to nearly all the Birds of Paradise. It is kind of a major part of this third largest rainforest system in the world, right? You're probably very familiar with the Amazon and the Congo, or the Central African rainforest, the two other large rainforest systems on the planet. But the third rainforest system on the planet is this one here in Southeast Asia, or the Indo-Pacific, which includes New Guinea. And this forest has been incredibly threatened and has lost a tremendous amount of forest over the last 20 years, which is roughly the amount of time I've been going to New Guinea. So everything that you're seeing in this image here in this forest is forest loss data. The different colors of red and orange and yellow are just sort of different. It's kind of like a heat map, different years of forest loss. And so out of this whole region, the only places that have substantial amount of undisturbed or intact forests left are these patches here in northern Sumatra, little ones, relatively big, but little overall. Central Borneo is still, incredibly intact in places, but is threatened all the way around, and a really important, forest ecosystem to be maintained. And then when you look over at New Guinea, you see, a lot of black there. And that black is not because the forest has already been lost in that case, it's because that's mostly where the forest is. But you can see this, threats are increasing there as well. So some of the black in this image is because the forest has been gone since before 20 years ago. Other parts like Australia there, or in Java, are places where forests either never existed or has been lost before 20 years ago. So, what I'm really excited about, and work that Tim and I have been doing in the last few years, is, comes in recognition that about half of the intact rainforest in this whole region is in New Guinea. The next biggest chunk is in Borneo. And so, we are really trying to put effort in with the, opportunities we have about sharing Birds of Paradise to get more attention to and efforts focused on keeping these forests intact and finding, less destructive ways of having the people that live there, become, accustomed to the type of the level of development that they want, but without having to be, have their homelands also so disturbed from things like big logging and oil palm and those kinds of things. So this is important, right? Not just for the species that live there, the endemic species like Birds of Paradise, but it's important to all of us, because of the incredible global benefits that intact forests provide. Things like carbon sequestration in a time of climate change is incredibly important. We can't afford to lose these forests. But we're literally seeing, changes coming every time we go to New Guinea on the ground. And in Western New Guinea in particular, road building, kind of for no other reason than just for increasing, development and capacity by the Indonesian government, has really happened all over at a kind of a big scale government initiative. Even in places like this is the highest road in all of New Guinea. It crosses this divide at 3,700 meters, kind of the highest range in New Guinea above tree line. These are formerly glaciated rocks. Looks more like something you might see in Maine or in the northern forests of North America than what we think of as New Guinea. 12,000 feet, and they put this road up here, and no one lives there. It's not even connecting anything. And of course, roads passing through forested regions end up, they do good things for the people that live there. It gives them access to the cities and things, but it causes an enormous amount of erosion when they're not built to last. And New Guinea gets a lot of rain and roads don't last. And it gives people access to these forests for logging and other things. This just down this hill here that we're looking at actually is that forest where the superb and the parodia live, the individuals that we filmed. It's not the only place where they live, but this road is now encroached right into the place where these birds thrive, and we're just hopeful that the people that live there and that own those forests, that they continue to protect them because of the interest in people like yourselves, birders, that come there to see them. Of course, in the lowlands, there's been deforestation going on for a lot longer, and more conversion over to things like palm oil plantations. And that is still a big issue all throughout New Guinea. In fact, if you look at this map of all of Western New Guinea, Indonesian New Guinea here, all the colored blobs you see there, this is land that as of 2020 already exists under some form of a lease for development, a concession for logging, for some kind of mining operation, or other mineral extraction, or palm oil. And so not all of these are being realized yet. So there's a real opportunity to work with the NGOs who are working with the local provincial governments and the central government in Indonesia, to try to figure out what they can do to work with the companies that have made these leases and figure out how to get them not to act on it, and not clear the forest for the various things that they were there to do, and look for alternatives that can bring economic development to the region. So this is hard work. It's in fact, people always ask how hard it is to go into the forest and film birds of paradise, and that there's a lot of sweat equity in that work, but in many ways that's easy work compared to the hard work of conservation, and doing it in a way that's lasting and is beneficial to the indigenous people, and really works for protecting the ecosystems and all the things that they provide both locally and globally. Doing that takes a huge amount of effort and lots of international support in places like New Guinea that simply don't have the funding in these far off provinces of Indonesia to enforce it in any way and make it successful. But our experience is that sharing birds of paradise, like this red bird of paradise here from Wagyu Island, with people all around the world, people like yourselves, it's really taught us that birds of paradise are almost revered as the iconic symbols of the New Guinea rainforest. And so, we are trying to elevate their status as ambassadors for these forests, and, finding ways to partner with organizations in places like the Indonesian side of New Guinea, Papua, Indonesia, to work with a coalition of, people in the government and in NGOs and even businesses and other institutions that are looking to find solutions to keep New Guinea's forest intact. And we're doing that for, today, so that Tim and I can have a chance, maybe after this pandemic's over, to go back to New Guinea, and for the future, both for, birders who can go there and for our children that can go there and still have birds of paradise, but also obviously for the future of these great, magnificent birds themselves. So that's where I'm going to wind it up tonight. And hopefully we can answer some questions here. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, Bill, and people can start asking questions or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed. That was wonderful. I have, excuse me. I'd like to we have a number of questions that have been submitted. I'm going to start with physiology, do a little categorization. The curlicue type tail feathers, are they feathers? What is their composition on the Wilsons?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in that case, they are definitely feathers. So if you think about the tail of a bird, you've got, a bunch of different feathers that form the tail. And there's these two central feathers, usually the kind of longest ones on a, graduated, tail of a flighted bird. And in this case, those two central tail feathers have been completely modified, and they're elongated and they actually cross. And so it's the the left one that curls out to the right and the right one that curls out to the left. And in the Wilsons versus the Magnificent, it's similar, but they're a little different in their way that they curl and their thickness. But I think in both of them, there's the central rachis, the shaft of the feather, and there's only a vein on one half. So it's like if you took a normal feather and you only cut off half the feather vein, and so you had the surface area only on one half, and that's what makes that kind of unusual shape. Now in some other birds of paradise, there are tail wires that are also feathers, but they don't have any vein at all. They're just basically the wire part of the rachis, the center shaft of the feather. And other things that are like the red bird of paradise that are completely different altogether, completely fused into what looks like plastic. So some incredible diversity in feather ornamentation in birds of paradise.
Do they ever molt the tail feathers?
They do. They all molt all those feathers. So everything you've seen, all those ornaments are molted annually and regrown. So even when you're looking at like these, like I showed at the end there, that greater bird of paradise with the classic, bird of paradise plumes, all of those are even regrown. And the long-tailed species that you might have seen, Strapia and other things, those are regrown every year. And so when the males are molting, that's about the only time of year that they don't really display all that much. Females aren't as interested in them, and they're just putting all their energy into growing feathers.
Right.
For the display.
What time is that? A consistent time of year for most species?
It is a consistent time of year for most species. It varies around New Guinea based on seasonal patterns of rainfall, which is now more variable than ever. But yeah, typically, there is a time where there's a kind of a peak display season with a lot of variation around it that runs maybe 8 months of the year. It often corresponds more with our fall, but there's a lot of variation around that.
Right. So speaking of feathers, is the feather trade and capture of birds for that purpose still an existing threat?
It's a really good question. It is still a threat, but it is certainly by no means the biggest threat. So habitat loss and things like changing climate, changing even intact ecosystems is a much bigger threat than being hunted for plumes or something like that. The birds that are hunted now is for a little bit for the kind of the black market in cage birds in Southeast Asia. Birds of paradise don't do really well in small cages, and so they're not really sought after for that because they don't tend to last like other things do. So there are some that are hunted kind of as stuffed trophies, also mostly on a black market, but they're I don't know, prized by people as symbols, just like most stuffed things are you hang on the wall.
So you were saying that sounds like their breeding behavior they exhibit about 2/3 of the year they engage in.
Yeah.
And I know that sunlight is a factor to get the feathers to be most vibrant. Uh, do they continue to display on cloudy or rainy days, or do they wait for sunny days?
That's a good question. So it depends on the species. So for the species that have a lot of the really bright yellow or red plumage that display up in the top of the canopy, like sometimes out in the open exposed,
Right.
they in the females basically look at them from all perspectives. There's not like a really distinct relationship between where the male is and where the female is and where the light's coming from. They tend to display in more bright light environments, but almost never on like a bright sunny day. So if it's like really bright in the middle of the day, they're not there. Or even on a bright morning, they tend to display more when the sun's low and there's good lighting. Like you think about the times when if you're a photographer, when the light's good for photography, that's when they're going to be most active. Now, some of these species that display deep down in the forest understory or on the ground, the ones that tend to be more black with these intense iridescent feathers, they're in low light environments. They evolved in the cloud forest, and they basically prefer to display when it's cloudy. So the sunlight, they're looking for a place where the sunlight's going to come through the forest and hit the forest floor, but they don't want it to be a beam of bright light. They're looking for like a diffuse light that would come through, bright overcast clouds. So they like it when it's like sunny and overcast. And that's what really works for those iridescent feathers. Fortunately, they live in a cloud forest, so that happens frequently.
Are you aware of any extinct species of birds of paradise?
Totally extinct. No, I'm not. I think there are some populations, and maybe populations that could be distinct enough that if the right information was available, they could be distinct species or recognized as such, and haven't been studied because those populations either don't exist anymore, or we just don't know. It hasn't been enough work to know how viable those populations are. But no, fortunately, there's no extinct birds of paradise yet, which is great.
So, taking a step back from extinction, do you have a sense of the range of the size of the populations of the different species?
The real answer is really we don't know with any scientific confidence, because that kind of population level work just hasn't been done. New Guinea is a difficult place to get to even today. It's much easier than it was 20 years ago, and there's much more opportunity for getting around, but it is far away, it is expensive, and the conditions are difficult outside of a handful of areas that a lot of us go to again and again. Birders go there, and Tim and I go there too. So the basic kind of survey work that we would like to have students working on, or students in the country's young academics could do, just haven't really done that work yet.
Yeah.
And I would say it's going to be variable. Some species are really widespread and their populations are going to be very large, with some geographic variation. Some species, even if they are healthy, it's going to be a pretty small overall population size, because their natural range, like that Wilson's bird of paradise, it's only found on Waigeo and Batanta Islands in the Raja Ampat. And these are not huge islands, and they are only found within a certain sort of forest elevational band or habitat type around those islands, which doesn't exist everywhere. You can walk across those islands and you have all different kinds of forests, and they're just simply not there in forest that's not disturbed by people, because the trees aren't what they need, or the ground is too rocky or something for males to display in. So I suspect that those are pretty small populations to begin with, even before human issues are entered into it.
Right. So have you been able to do studies of their nesting behavior and how many chicks they produce?
So there's been a few observational studies, and we've done a few, nest documentation efforts. No like long-term studies on nest biology. Nests are pretty hard to find. Often, hidden away in the thick part of a pandanus or something. But they typically have, females do all the parental care, and they typically lay, one egg. Occasionally, some species, or sometimes there'll be two chicks, but usually it's one a year. Birds of paradise are pretty long lived as far as we know from birds, how long they've lived in captivity. But even a couple of instances of where individuals have been banded and then recaptured, it seems like they probably are capable of living 20 to 30 years. So a female even successfully rearing a chick a year, or even if it's not successful every year, has pretty good reproductive success over its lifetime. But yeah, we don't know a lot about that, or much about predation threats for on the nests and so on.
Right. Do you have any? I'm gonna turn you into a travel guide for a moment. Any recommendations or suggestions for how someone might go about traveling to that part of the world, and what might be a recommended destination to have an opportunity to see hopefully several birds, several
Yeah.
species?
So, there are opportunities in both the eastern half of New Guinea, which is the nation of Papua New Guinea, and then in the western half of New Guinea, which is the Indonesian part of New Guinea, which is the provinces of Papua and West Papua. Historically, I would say over the last 20 years, most birders, the opportunity for bird tourism was better in Papua New Guinea, and there's still some really great places to go to, but overall it hasn't really kept pace, I think, with the opportunities that are growing in the Indonesian side, especially in that Bird's Head region, which has a lot of tourism and tourism infrastructure built around the diving opportunities, which have been long sought after there. And that kind of infrastructure has sort of expanded inland, literally, and has made a lot of places where eco-tourists, who aren't just divers, can go stay in villages or even in small guest houses and get access to forests and see a handful of species, whether it's Wilson's or red bird of paradise and Raja Ampat, or in the mainland there, going into the Arfak Mountains, there are guest houses that cater to birders and more general eco-tourists, where you could see easily 3 or 4 species of birds of paradise. Now, if you're a real serious birder, which I suspect some of the folks on this call are, going with a experienced trip leader and guide who's done it all before and knows the places and then has the contacts, that's still the best way of really doing it. And all of the above, no matter which option you take, is expensive, and you need to give yourself plenty of time. But the best way of seeing the most birds of paradise would be to go with an experienced tour company that guides birders there.
Right. Expensive, and it's important to allow time for dealing with jet lag, as it's
Definitely.
12 times away.
There's no easy way of getting there. No matter how much I've done it, it doesn't really get any easier. Actually, it gets harder the more you've done it. You just, when I was doing it when I was 25, it was a lot easier than it is now.
Yep. You mentioned that there are a number of NGOs working in that part of the world. Are there any in particular that you would cite as being particularly worthy of support, who are making a real difference in both parts of New Guinea?
Yeah. So in the last, as you probably gathered from what I talked about tonight, the last 5+ years, Tim and I have really focused our field efforts on the conservation opportunities around what's happening in that, West Papua province in Indonesia. And there are a lot of NGOs and even the government of West Papua and Papua have really stepped forward and have pledged to protect 70% of their remaining forests in this thing called the Maniquarry Declaration. Now, whether they can get the, financial incentives to really make that happen is another question, or, the ability to police it. But the motivation is there from the people. And there are smaller NGOs. There's one that's actually birding tourism oriented that Tim and I have worked with for a long time. The birding arm of it is called Magnificus Expeditions, like Magnificus, like Magnificent Bird of Paradise, um, and they have a small community-based organization that helps support the local communities that they bring birders to. And so that income that comes from everything from women and children who provide support roles to the tourists, to the landowners who maintain the forest for the birds. There's a bigger Indonesian NGO called Eco Nusa that is all about the people and the biodiversity and the forests and sustainable development in eastern Indonesia. So they're mostly focused in the Moluccas and in the Papuas. We've started working with them more real recently at the Lab of Ornithology, and are partnering with them on projects that are really focused on sharing the diversity of this part of Indonesia with Indonesians from the western part of Indonesia, who tend to be more urban and more bigger city dwellers in many cases, and see New Guinea as kind of like the outback, and often have stereotypes about the people and the animals that live there. And we're trying to help use these imagery to work with them to share. But that's an organization that's worthy of support. In Papua New Guinea, yeah, there's a handful, and I haven't been there in a few years to say who I would highly recommend, other than there's a non-bird organization called the Tree Kangaroo Conservation Project or program. It's run out of the main zoo in Seattle, and they have a big on the ground program there that works with villages in the Huon Peninsula and has protected a lot of forest, the most protected forest in all of Papua New Guinea. So includes some endemic birds of paradise.
So might some of that information be available on it's the birdsofparadiseproject.org is your website?
I don't think we have up-to-date information on all those kinds of organizations there. There might be some links through other things at the Lab of Ornithology. Yeah, okay. It's one of these things that we've been wanting to organize to provide easy links for people, for places to support, and we haven't updated that in a while.
Yeah. So would you like to provide just a quick description of that website, or is that something that has information that people might be interested in, the Birds of Paradise?
The Birds of Paradise Project website. We have a social media, Facebook and things that has more updated information. In some cases, the project website is a great place to go just to get all of your information on bird of paradise behavior and diversity, and information about the work that Tim and I have done over the years. It's got educational information about color and behavior and sound vocalization. So it's a great resource for that kind of thing. We don't have the conservation pages built in there or anything yet. That's work that it's kind of new and ongoing, and we're pursuing it through other means. But yeah, I encourage you to go check it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A pleasure to have you. And
yeah, well, thank you for having me.
And we hope to see best of luck with everything you're working on.
All right. Well, thank you. And maybe I'll bump into somebody in New Guinea one day. Every now and then, Tim and I are there and run into a group of birders from all over the world. And so if that happens, let me know. Say hi.
Yep.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.